I'm Benjamin Hall, and I'm searching for heroes. Brandonn Mixon is a co-founder of the Veterans Community Project. It is a charity that builds tiny homes for homeless veterans. But more than that, it seeks to bring communities together and to take care of all veterans who are struggling and finding it difficult to go from military life to civilian life, and then helping them rebuild their lives from the bottom up. But for Brandonn, this is also very personal. He himself was medically discharged from the army while serving in Afghanistan, and after that, experienced firsthand how difficult it can be to be without the support of the military and the community around you. There was a time when he himself was lost, was struggling, was homeless, and tried to take his own life. But he pulled through, and now he helps others to do the same. His story and the story of Veterans Community Project is one of resilience, of courage, and most importantly, of community. Brandonn and I speak about the difficult times he faced, and then how he managed to get both him and his family through it, and how he went on to create something so positive for so many others, and how to this day he keeps saving lives. Here is my conversation with Brandonn Mixon.
Well, a little bit about my story. I grew up in I would say a little bit of a poor city here in Kansas City. It's called Raytown. And growing up, I was a kid with a learning disability. I had ADD, and my parents were all educators, right? And so I was always that kid that was in pull-out classes, and in my opinion, it was like I was never good enough per se, right? And so I never really fit in the rest of my family because the rest of my family, again, very smart educators, doctoral degrees, the whole nine. And here I'm the kid that's, with 5 other kids in the class, and that's the only way that I could learn, right? Well, that being said, high school rolls around, right? It's if I remember correctly, it's sophomore year. And, my dad's kind of a parent of the South, right? Him and I kind of got into it. And next thing you know, I ended up kind of fighting back. And he said, all right, son, you're fighting enough to fight back. You're old enough to be able to be a man and move out. So I ended up getting kicked out of the house. And I actually was homeless, just couch surfing and trying to figure out how to make ends meet my sophomore year all the way through senior year, right? And it's the darn Army of One commercial that got me. Army of One, family of one, right? That was the slogan that they ran there for a while. And I always imagined what I was like, I had family, right? The family in the aspect of parents and a lot of that. But it was one of those, it's like I never really connected, I felt, with anybody, right? And so my process, joining the military, it was more of a, oh crap, I'm not going to amount to anything. I need to do something more like my life, and I need to join, right? And that's really one of the reasons why I actually decided to join the military. Originally, I went into Air Force to try to be an Air Force pilot because I love aviation, and I was dark colorblind. And they're like, hey, sorry, we can't have you because of your colorblindness. And the Army recruiter, originally, the Army commercial was kind of what got me into the door, right? And I was like, oh, I'll just go Air Force. But anyways, Army recruiter came in and it's like, hey, well, what if we get you, on some aircrafts or something? Would you be cool with that? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And literally within a week of me taking basically my test, I found myself at Fort Knox, Kentucky, right? And
what was that like? What was that like? The first time you arrived and everything that you've imagined and been told about the military up till then, and you walk in the door. Was it? Were you happy to be there, or did you think this is not what I expected?
Well, okay, so there I was, right? Landed in, what is that? The Kentucky airport right there, Louisville airport, right? Mm-hmm. And here, I'm just an 18-year-old kid backpack, and I'm sitting there, and there's this drill sergeant, right? I guess these kids went AWOL and started yelling, and the drill sergeant started yelling at these kids that went AWOL, and there was like, dude, just going to town, right? My dad yelled at me, but I never understood that, right? Here's a kid that I felt like I had a little rough growing up, friends sling drugs and a lot of that stuff, now sitting in front of this Army recruiter that's yelling at other kids. And I'm crying at this point, right? I thought I was tough, not as tough as, that drill sergeant in front of me yelling at these other kids. So I kind of walk out of there, right? And I'm like, hey, I called my mom at that point. And I'm like, hey, I don't think the military is for me. I don't think I can do it. And she's like, no, you need to do this. It's going to be a great thing for you. And dude, at that point in my head, I was like, well, I'm either in it or I'm going to wuss out. And I'm not going to lie to you.
There's commit, man. You've got to try to do everything. Like if something feels hard at first, you got to keep trying at it, man, because you're living proof that look how it ended up. You ended up absolutely loving it, right? You ended in the 82nd.
Blessed, but I'm not gonna lie to you. I walked about 5 minutes down the hallway, and I'm like, nope. I'll just figure it out. I'll go live in a tent on the street before I'm going back to the Army recruiter. But no, made it back to the Army recruiter. Ended up doing basic. During basic, to me, is really the core building blocks and fundamentals of what I feel now is family. What I feel now is safe and home. Basic sucked. I'm an 18-year-old kid in here with, 20 and 30-year-olds, right? And they were some hard nights. I remember literally the pouring down rain in October in Kentucky and being in sand and just, sitting back against my battle buddy because we didn't have trees or anything would sit it back. We just go back to back, right? Like that's how we would sleep. And I just remember like almost crying, but then laughing at the same time because it's pouring down rain. We're soaked. It's cold, the whole nine. And to me at that moment,
it's when you don't think that it could get any worse. And so you can only laugh. You're like, there's no other solution. We're just going to laugh. I've experienced the same in a couple of war zones too, where you've got nothing else. You don't know what else to do. You got zero. So you look at your friend and you just laugh. You're like, we're in it now, mate. Like, we're in it together, brother.
Yeah. And that was the moment that I'd realized like, this is family. This is somebody that truly has my back, no matter what's going to happen and what it works from here. Like he has my back. And that was the first time in my life, sorry, I'm getting the goosebumps, that like, I felt family, that I felt like this is unconditional love in a way. You know what I'm saying? Like,
can I just ask, do you feel that you didn't feel that with your own family? Like, did you not have that sort of connection?
To be honest with you, I think as a young kid, I felt like there were stipulations like, hey, you do A, I provide B, as to where in the military, it's not. Like, it doesn't matter what you provide. We're all in this together. And even literally the weakest link in the military or the strongest week, we're bonded. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're not going to perform unless we all perform, That was 2008. So you knew, I mean, Iraq, Afghanistan, they were going on at the time. So you signed up, presumably knowing that you were heading out. Actually, it was 09. So one of the reasons why I also wanted to join, I still remember being in a classroom in my elementary school when 9/11 happened. I remember my teacher crying, right? When the first tower had been hit and they had said it was a terrorist attack. I remember the feelings that my teacher was like putting on kind of all of us, right? I remember her just crying and the devastation. And I remember when the second tower had got hit, like the sheer, just everybody in the room, the silence, kind of what was going on. My dad came and got me that day, but I still remember in my head, like it's burned like an image of the individual that was this, they captured them on the window coming out of it, that instead of, being on fire, they wanted to jump out. Right. And it's still like just burned in my head of like, what if I was put in that moment? What decision would I make? And it was kind of my way to say, you know what, like, I wish nobody ever has to see a parent or an individual go through that. And so knowing that I was going to war, it was like my way to contribute, right? I wanted to give back to the U.S. so the U.S. would never kind of feel that pain. Does that make sense?
No, look, 100%. And in fact, like I've covered, I've been out to various countries. I've seen, a fair amount of conflict. And I always ask myself exactly the same question. What would it be like if I was in that situation? If I was the one that had to make that decision, how would I respond? And look, last year, I finally had to learn that because I was put in that position. The team was blown up, the guys died, I was injured, and I had to suddenly realize what that was going to be like for me. And I think it was because of the memories I had, the things I'd seen, that I managed to find the strength to get through it. You have to learn from the things you've seen. You have to use them in the best possible way. And so I guess it's the same thing that you did. You had that in your mind. You'd seen it happen. You didn't want it to happen to other people. And so you were happy to go out and serve to try and prevent it.
Yeah, absolutely. It was my little contribution. And through this kind of contribution in my head, I found myself, like I said, at basic and finding this team in love. And next thing you know, I'm becoming a squad leader, right? Again, a kid that was pretty much told his whole life, I'm not going to amount to anything, now becoming a squad leader in charge of 20 and 30-year-olds. From there, going to Fort Eustis, Virginia for my training school, to becoming basically a squad leader there again, right? Graduating ahead of my class and with honors, to next thing I know, being stationed at Fort Bragg with the 82nd Airborne, right? Through this process, I found a real team and family in the whole nine. And man, I was excelling, right? Like I was on top of the world. I don't think I could have ever been defeated. I didn't see anything like that coming.
That sounds, and I know exactly what you're going to say, is that you were on top of the world, you had it all, and suddenly that was suddenly taken away from you, man.
So yes, then that goes into Afghanistan. So I actually volunteered to deploy early to Afghanistan in 2011. Mm-hmm. We were taking some of our new Black Hawks over to Afghanistan, and we loaded up the C5. So C5, we flew over there, landed, unloading a lot of our C5s, a lot of our luggages, and a lot of that stuff. I actually climbed on top of a Connex box. And on top of that Connex box, there's actually some suitcases, right? And with those suitcases, my Velcro, my flight suit caught the Velcro of one of the bags. And when I threw it off the side, the weight threw me off the side as well. So fell about 25, 30 feet because of how the Connex box
was a long way down.
And the rollers and everything else like that, landed on my left shoulder, hit my head, kind of didn't think anything of it, right? I just remember my buddies going, dude, are you okay? Are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine, right? I
bet you jump up as well. The adrenaline's already kicking. So you're on your feet straight away. Oh, fine, man, I'm fine.
Yeah, I didn't think anything of it. I'm like, no, I'm fine. Like, let's push on, because I'm in Afghanistan, right? Like, I've been training. It's like, to me, like the same thing as a Super Bowl. I've been training for my whole life for this one mission, and now I'm here. Like, I don't care what happens. Like, I'm going to stay there. I'm going to complete this mission. We're going to do what we need.
This is just as you arrived? This happened right as soon as you'd landed?
I arrived in Afghanistan, right? Like the first day. Like, and I'm like, man, I'm already getting screwed up, right? But I didn't think anything of it. I just kind of pushed on. And we were actually stationed at a Fob Shank, Afghanistan, which is like RC East-ish. And so that time it just kind of kept flying.
How long after you fell? How long till?
Actually, it would have been 2.5, almost 3 months, right? Actually, we were just doing a normal routine mission, and I thought so. I saw some incoming right-hand side RPG or something, and so I had called it. And so we came in to do a roll and landing. We didn't get hit or anything like that. It wasn't some crazy explosion or even helicopter accident. It just happened to be a little bit of a hard-on landing, and I didn't lock my inertia rails in time, which I hit kind of the back of the grenade sump of the pilot and really hurt my shoulder again, right? Again, didn't really think too much of it other than some pretty bad shoulder pain. Again, we weren't really in a firefight or anything like that. I just safer than sorry, and we came into a roll and landing. And from there, I ended up telling the pilot, hey, this is what's going on. And then they ended up bringing me back to the FOB, right? Through that process, I was working with the flight doc. The flight doc, you know what? I actually want to medevac you to Bagram. So I ended up flying over to Bagram. I really didn't get a chance to say much to my battle buddies, right? And the aspect of like, hey, I was more like, hey, I'll be right back. No big deal. I got a little
because you thought you were just coming back again.
100%. I got a little bit of shoulder pain. Man, I'm going to come right back, right? As for a lot of the guys that are like, dude, BS, like, there's nothing wrong with you, right? It looks like there's nothing wrong with me or anything like that. And Bagram, they're like, hey, we actually want to send you to Landstuhl, Germany. We don't know if we can treat you. And so I'm kind of like scratching my head. I'm like, I got a little bit of shoulder pain, like it's dislocated or something. Just put it back in place, send me back into the play, And next thing you know, I find myself on this KC-135 out of Bagram Airfield, and man, I am the only guy in front of me. That's where they put all the wounded, right on these cots. And you have anything from burn?
I've been in one of those myself, yeah.
You can't even explain to anybody the smell, the sounds, the ambience of it, right? And I'm thinking, I'm like, why am I on this medevac bird? I am not, these true heroes that are on these bunks, right? And then there's kind of doctors walking around. I'm like literally the only soldier that's like kind of willing and able. You know what I'm saying? And so like at this point,
it's funny. It's funny because you said earlier, perhaps you kind of felt that when you were growing up, that you didn't quite felt like you fit in. And might you even say that there you were on that plane, you started to get those same feelings that why are you there?
Yeah.
You're not fitting in either. You shouldn't be in there.
100%. I was feeling that again, right? And it was really hard for me. Like, these are true heroes that are literally across the bunk for me, that, and some of them essentially gave the ultimate sacrifice to why am I here? Like, I'm not them. Why am I here? I'm getting off the tarmac right there in Landstuhl, Germany. They ended up taking me right to a CT scan, and come to find out I actually crushed my C1, C2, T3, and T4 vertebrae. T4 vertebrae had actually been crushed and had bulges and a lot of that in it. Dislocated my left shoulder and actually and actually had a TBI with swelling. And I had no clue, right? I thought it was just a shoulder injury, no big deal. But I was still showing a lot of kind of brain swelling and a lot of that in Landstuhl. And talking with my doctor, I was like, hey, like, how does this happen? And he kind of explained to me like it could have been before. Obviously, it wasn't the hard landing, right? The hard landing was just kind of one of those things that initially did me in, you know what I'm saying? But luckily at this point, when I arrived there, that like, hey, it could have gotten a lot worse with this swelling and a lot of this stuff. If we didn't catch this, we don't know where you'd be, right? And so I was very fortunate enough at the time that they had caught a lot of this stuff. And he's like, hey, you're not going back to Afghanistan, which really, really bothered me, right? Because I'm like, no, I don't care. Like, in my mind, right, I was like, I will give the ultimate sacrifice where I'm just going to, live my whole military career and continue to serve, right? Because that's what I wanted. That was my family. They were everything to me. And now this guy in front of me is trying to say like, yeah, no, you're not going to Afghanistan again. We're going to send you back to Fort Bragg, right? So found myself in Fort Bragg. Again, they ended up medevacing me in Fort Bragg, going through extensive rehabilitation, cognitive therapy, occupational therapy. And through this process, I wasn't really showing any signs. Anytime I would actually put body armor on, it was pulling basically my shoulder out of socket. And so I had an impingement, so I couldn't use my left arm right. And it was really bothering me. I was trying to focus on a lot of that. At the same time, I actually volunteered to do a funeral detail. It was kind of a way to continue to serve. Through this process, we had 2 Apache pilots that I remember from the FRG meetings and a lot of this that I found myself in Walla Walla, Washington, and realizing who his wife was. And I still remember, basically, I didn't hand the flag over, but was next to the gentleman handing the flag over. I made eye contact with her and realized who it was, right? At that point in time, in my mind, it's almost like this sharp pain that went through me. And I was like, holy crap.
Sorry, who was it?
Oh, it was not one of my Black Hawk pilots. It's one of the Apache pilots. I don't want to get into names if that's okay, but it was just this feeling of, holy cow, like the sadness, right? A lot of us guys don't go full circle in the military, right? We just contribute one part. And to me, it kind of all hit me as to like, but if I was only in Afghanistan, like now that I'm in the right mindset, I understand that like, he's an Apache pilot. It's not like I could have helped. You know what I'm saying? I'm a Black Hawk.
No, I know. And of course, you're looking into the eyes of his family members.
Yeah.
That's with them forever, you know, and that's where you see the loss, permanent loss forever. You know, I mean, that's tricky. More of our conversation right after this. I want to sort of move on a little bit to when you were medically discharged and then how you made the switch over to starting, VCP.
Basically, doctor came to me a couple months actually after that funeral and said, hey, man, we're going to medically retire you. I said, no, I don't want that. I tried fighting it. Nothing I could do about it. Next thing you know, I find myself getting out medically and
Was it the TBI or the vertebrae? I mean, a bunch of things.
So shoulder, TBI, spinal cord stuff. They pretty much found me unfit for duty. And being told that, man, was just really a stab in the heart. It was basically telling me that I'm not good enough. And, man, that really put me into a spiral of depression. And like I said, find myself in Kansas City, staying at my parents' house at the time because I didn't know where to go. And to be honest with you, I was like, you know what? My friends that got killed in Afghanistan, some of my friends that are now back, from Afghanistan, like, I just want to be with them, right? That was the time that was the happiest in my life. And so I really thought that suicide was the answer. It was just not in the right mindset, right? And long story short, I thought I was going to take my life that night. During the process of try to take the attempt to take my life, my wife essentially cut me in the process of it. It's like, no, you're not doing this.
Wow.
You're going to.
Mate, I'm sorry to hear that, man. Did she just walk in? Or?
Yeah. She basically said, no, you're not going to do this. We're going to get you with your battle buddies again, right? And long story short, ended up getting involved where she helped sign me up for another program, another veterans nonprofit, with the Warrior Project, actually. And I got involved with other veterans, right? I was kind of excuse my language, an a-hole, right? And a lot of the stuff, but that's actually where I met some of the other co-founders for VCP now. But man, I still remember meeting with those guys, and they were telling me about, helping veterans and making differences in a lot of that stuff. They were working for other nonprofits at the time. So we all kind of really stayed in touch. We became really good friends. And I actually started a heating and cooling business doing free heating and cooling for veterans, right? It was kind of
I guess, first of all, you must have suddenly seen the sheer number of other veterans who were in the same position as you. And maybe you felt that perhaps you were the only one and you were depressed. And as you start to look around, you must see it's terrible how many, actually, the figures of people, veterans out there who don't have anything. So you must have suddenly started to see that and see how many there were. What gave you that? What gave you that push to try and give back?
To be honest with you, really it was when I picked up the phone call when one of the other co-founders called me. It was actually Veterans Day of 2015. He had told me that, hey, could you help pitch in money to put this guy in a hotel during Veterans Day weekend because he had nowhere to go. And I was like, well, doesn't he qualify for veteran services? And he's like, no, man, he doesn't at all. And that's the instance that I learned that because of your discharge status, because of your length of time or your military branch, you don't qualify for services. That was mind-blowing to me. I automatically assumed that, if you served in the military, you qualified for all these military, benefits and the whole nine. And now he's telling me that, no, this guy can't go to the VA and get any mental health help or any help at all because he's dishonorably discharged, right? And now doesn't qualify for any programs in Kansas City. He's not even looked at as even a veteran, right? Although he served at this point 6 or 7 years, but because he's dishonorably discharged, he doesn't qualify for anything and literally left on the street. So I was like, yeah, I'm absolutely in, whatever you need. And at that moment was kind of the change in name to me. It was like, there's veterans out there that got left behind. I had a really good friend while still with the 82nd Gutierrez that essentially got kicked out because of a DUI, right? Second deployment, saw some stuff, and then really started drinking heavily and got kicked out with a dishonorable discharge. Like, I was with guys that got kicked out for being overweight or had drug addiction or alcohol addictions due to mental health stuff, right? But in the military,
no support and no support at all for them if they're kicked out for those reasons.
Not at all. And I didn't know that, right? And now I'm looking at it as like one of Gutierrez was my really good friend of like now is out on the streets. Like, this is how I viewed it, on the streets, and is now going to take his own life or going to freeze to death because we don't have his back. Like, to me, it all started kind of clicking at once, and I'm like, there's literally guys that I served with that are now homeless and are not considered a veterans because the way the word veteran is used now, the way their discharge status and a lot of that was. And so we started doing a lot of research trying to figure out, is there a nonprofit in the United States that helped any veteran? Well, there really wasn't at the time.
And I suppose that's it. You ended up setting up VCP to primarily provide homes, small houses to them. Is that the biggest problem that you saw for many of these people? It was, more so than getting them the support or jobs. Is that where you had to start? You said the most important thing is to get them off the street, get a roof over their heads, and then we can start building.
Originally, we didn't provide transitional housing. We started the nonprofit to really be a bulldog in the community for anybody who served, right? They could come to us. We could help with the discharge upgrade. We could help them navigate Catholic Charities or all these other programs, because there's other great programs out there, right? but just not veteran related. And nobody was putting two to two together. When we started really figuring out, hey, we can get them here, we can get them there, we can do this with them and get them in a hotel here. A lot of the individuals that were falling through the cracks, they had nowhere to go. So then we realized that there was a huge need for transitional housing here in Kansas City. And with that being said, the whole reason behind the tiny houses and the concept of tiny houses was not because it was sexy or anything else like that. Is actually because it relates a lot to my military experience, right? I lived in a bee hut in Afghanistan, and to me, it's one of the places that I felt the safest, right? So the tiny houses were actually built and designed similar to my bee hut in Afghanistan. Yes, they're a lot nicer. They have a sink in them and a bathroom and then the whole nine, but it was built from that experience, right? A lot of us struggle with that transition from the military back to civilian life. And so that actually was the whole thought process of the tiny houses. Going through that process, we had realized there's nobody in the United States also that builds tiny houses according to code. So we worked with the city of Kansas City to actually build them to IRC codes, which allows us to be inside city limits, which allows us to be able to, when these individuals transition or families transition, they can transition into an apartment or buy their own house or permanent supported living, right? And so
it's amazing how you jumped from getting involved to actually building these homes, because what about finance? Where do you find other people? I mean, you have an idea, but you haven't described how exactly did you make that happen? Where did you begin? Who did you speak to? Where did you get the community? How did you meet veterans? How did that work?
So really it was, like I said, there was a group of 5 of us that three of the co-founders were literally, they worked in other nonprofits and went out and did a lot of street outreach and a lot of that. My background came in building, but how we funded it? Well, we started telling a lot of the community, hey, this is what we're doing. Initially, a lot of people are like, no, we're good. And so I actually, I sold 2 of my race cars at the time because it kind of fell in love with racing at the same time, and built the very first tiny house model, and we put it on a trailer. Once we did that, I built the very first one in the driveway, put it on this trailer that was a hay trailer. To be honest with you, was unsafe as heck. But then we started really driving that around and fundraising on that little tiny house model, right? But we all emptied our savings accounts. A couple of the co-founders mortgaged their houses, and we put our money where our mouth was. We really felt that our battle buddies, our military battle buddies would have done the same for us. We deserved to do it for them. And once we started doing that is when kind of the ball started rolling, right? The community wrapped around us and said, hey, love this concept. Let's make it happen. And really the community was responsible for making this happen. The community was the one that said, hey, what about a navigation campus or a community center that we can provide dental, that we can provide healthcare, that we can do veterinary services, which we provide now down in the village for the vet. Huh. It was the community that did it. We had this crazy idea of providing transitional housing and case managers, but not all of the wraparound services that now we provide that we're literally kind of on the forefront of providing for veterans in the community. How do you pick?
I mean, there are tens of thousands of veterans who need this kind of support. What is the process like for you? Sadly, you're going to have to pick some. There's a limit to how many houses you can build. So what's the process like for people you could build houses for?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of people are like, well, do you have a waiting list? We actually don't. The reason why that is we're not trying to have individual veterans compete for this process, right? What it is doing community case management with a lot of these individual veterans and say, hey, where are you at? Do you have a family, or do you need to go into an inpatient for, substance abuse, whatever the case may be? And also lean on community partners. Now the VA has some other really great housing programs that some of the veterans that come to us actually qualify for. So we're able to work hand in hand with the VA now. Same with Catholic Charities and a lot of that. We're trying to use a lot of the resources in the community. Instead of saying VCP, we're going to do everything and spend all the donors are the whole line. No, what it is lean on our community partners and the individuals that fall through the cracks that don't qualify for anything else and that are ready for this program are the individuals that we bring in, right? So there's not a waiting process. What it is trying to say, hey, all right, we're going to work through this process. And when we see them taking kind of initial steps, getting the things that we need them to do, it's like, hey, actually, you know what? It's time for housing. Are you ready to come in? Are you ready to do this with us? And then do in-house case management. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
On how we do it?
No, absolutely. First of all, I'm thinking of all the variety of different cases you must have seen. And you mentioned families there, first of all. I mean, you must have come across some veterans with families who have nothing, and it's them and their kids trying to find somewhere. I mean, that must be just horrible to see, but incredible motivation as well. I mean, you say it's the families of veterans too.
Well, yes. To be honest with you, what we're finding lately is, and what's crazy, and keep in mind we're national now. I'm just talking just about Kansas City. We're seeing a lot more fathers ending up with custody of their kids. Well, guess what? There's no shelter, especially in Kansas City, that allows men and kids. Well, now we're seeing a big change in society that a lot of men are ending up with their kids. So down in the village, we're seeing a lot more men getting custody of their kids because they're able to have an address. A lot of people take their address for granted, but an address allows you to do a lot of different things, allows you to be able to get mail. So now you can apply for a job, allows you to be able to say, hey, I have an address, so now my kid can go to school. It changes that mindset. Another thing that we're seeing a really big population starting to come in is women with military sexual trauma. Well, a lot of these females that we're seeing have got out with a dishonorable discharge because it's the easiest way to get them out. You're talking about females that I personally have served with, right? How I view it, or how we view it in our head, that are kicked out with a dishonorable discharge due to military sexual trauma. That's effed up. That is really messed up. And guess what? Like,
I can't help but think that, I mean, you must have reached out to the VA, to the military. I mean, to say, I mean, how does that process happen? Saying these are areas that must be dealt with. And have you, do you know what their response is? Do you know where they stand on this? Is there any movement to change this?
We are semi working with them, right? The VA has gotten, in my opinion, 100 times better, right? And the different programs now that are out there, and they're starting to take a lot of veterans and now that may not qualify, but still able to provide mental health services and a lot of that. But we're getting there. We're trying to change the forefront and writing the legislation and a lot of that stuff. But keep in mind, we never took federal funding before. We are completely privately funded, and the reason why that is, that limits on who we can and can't help if we take federal funding. So we stay 100% privately funded. So we're kind of still on the ground figuring out how do we provide the best services for the veterans on the ground, instead of saying, hey, military or VA or other nonprofits, you messed up. No, what we're doing is saying, hey, all right, we're bringing them in. Let's figure out how to do this together and keep triaging, right? You get what I'm saying? We're still kind of...
And it has to be together because, for example, it's not just about providing someone with a house or shelter. It's about that. Then it's about helping them find a job and a career. It's about helping their children find schools. It's about making sure that so there are so many different levels that you need to get someone, not just to give them one little step up, but to get them right back into the middle of society and totally, taken care of. And I suppose that's why you need the whole community of people to do different things to help them.
100%. It's building, in a lot of cases, it's just not, one day or sometimes even one incident that leads someone to be homeless or eliminate all of their network of support. And so when they're here in the village, we're focusing on, hey, how did you become homeless? What led to these instances? And really build the program around their individual needs, right? As for a lot of other programs are, hey, you have to do A, B, C, D in order to complete the program. It's not like that here. The program is completely based on, hey, what are your goals? Do you want to go to college? We literally had individuals that had dishonorably discharged, right, on the street. You think that, I'm not trying to sound like bad, but even face tattoos and stuff like that, they're like, oh man, like even me, that I was very, stereotyping, literally on the dean's list for one of the most recognized colleges here, and is now graduating and doing good. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're taking individuals that really nobody gave a chance and said, I believe in you. Like, we're going to figure this out together. Not only helping them get, college again, get into, hey, it's not just that I'm going to throw you here, you need to get a job and then transition. No. What is your life goal? What are we going to do? How do we long term? And that's where the difference is made, is saying, hey, we're going to do this together.
And you are alongside many of them for that whole process. And I imagine you must have had some conversations at the very beginning, speaking to that guy or that girl on the street who thinks they have nothing. And you are talking to them, you've still got it. And I imagine you've had to convey that message a few times. And I wonder if you say to them, I know what that's like. I have been there. and then use that to will them on. But I mean, you must have saved lives just by encouraging people, just getting them back on their feet.
I'm not going to say, to be honest with you, man, that I did that. I played a very small part, and the community has given us vets a second chance and say, we believe in you, the difference. And this didn't really hit me. I was in Sioux Falls. That's one of our expansion cities a couple of weeks ago. And I was talking with Mike, who's one of the veterans there. And he was telling me a story, right? And then he had said, you know what, but you guys are just another nonprofit and I'm just another number to you. And I looked over to Mike and I'm like, what do you mean, Mike? He's like, man, I've just been a number my whole life. And I said, Mike, man, you're not a number. You're my brother. Like, we would have served together in the military. Like, I love you unconditionally, and this is home. Like, I'm going to have your back, and we're going to figure this out together. He started crying, man. I have never had a vet. Like, I didn't know what to do because, like, I'm not used to people crying coming in front of me. He starts crying, and he's like, I'm not a number to you. And I'm like, no, man, I don't care about the money. And there's not a money associated to you with other nonprofits, right? You're Mike to us. Like, you matter. Your life matters. Like, you deserve that chance, brother. And you know what? Like, He is in the hospital in like the last 15 years. He decided to go to the hospital because he finally trusted us and believed in us. And come to find out, he had some severe medical issues. They told us if we didn't get him to the hospital within that week, he just would have died in his house. Like, talk about like...
You're saving lives, man. You're saving lives. We'll be back in a moment with Searching for Heroes. I know you've spoken in the past about, for many people, and for veterans, they leave the military. They don't know how to express how they're feeling or the difficulties they're facing. They keep it inside somewhat. I guess that must be one of the things you also try to teach them, is you've also got to speak up if you need something. You've got to come to us. You know, it has to be two ways.
100%. I think a lot of people are familiar with the statistic of the 22 vets that commit suicide a day. 16 of those vets are not accessing any types of services. They're not reaching out to anybody before they commit suicide. And that is mind-blowing. It's my job as a fellow veteran and a citizen of the United States to make sure that we're doing everything we can to give that resource to make my other brothers and sisters feel like, you know what? Like, if I'm going to reach out to somebody, we have one chance. Let's make sure that one chance is successful when we give them the opportunity to say, hey, and for us to say, you're not alone. It's okay to feel that way sometimes, but I'm here. I have your back. And unfortunately, that message is hard to convey to a lot of people, but we're working through it together and making sure that other veterans feel safe and feel like they are home and that they, no matter what their crazy thoughts are, they have somebody that has their back.
If you had to give advice, if you had to give someone, say something to someone who was right at the bottom, who didn't think they could move forward, to encourage them on, a veteran, what would you say? What would you say to them?
Man, that's a hard one, right? Because like that almost makes me dig deep down inside is, man.
Because you've gone through it too. You had to find that yourself when you were, almost at the bottom.
I think to remind myself that I'm not alone, that there are other military battle buddies out there, that we still have each other's back. We'll still love each other unconditionally. And it's kind of like, take my hand, like, we got this. I have your back. I think that's the message that I want to convey to somebody is like, look, man, I know stuff is hard. I know things that you're going through right now and you're struggling, and it's all going to be okay. I promise. Like, I remember holding that gun, right? I remember sitting there saying, I'm not good enough. And the message I want to convey is, you are good enough. It's going to be okay. Like, I'm not going to leave you behind. Like, we're done. Our military past might be over, but we're not done serving, and we can do this together. Like, I'm not going to leave you behind. I think that's the message that I want to convey. There's other vets out there. We're not going to leave you behind, man. Like, we're in this together.
Totally. What would you say also to family members? Because we talk all the time about veterans. We talk all the time about how they go through, almost impossible situations and how they fit into the real world when they leave. But their family members, their wife, their kids are around them too. And I think we've got to really always focus and look at them too and find how they can come together, when so often you come back from being abroad and you feel like you're slightly torn apart.
Damn, that's a hard one. Just continue.
How did you feel? I mean, how did you feel when you came back? You had been discharged. And what was that like with your wife? And how did you have to try and build a new life with her?
Man, it's hard because I know I'm still not in the military anymore, but like, to me, that was everything. Not saying my wife doesn't matter, but it's almost like I had more unconditional love for my battle buddies that I served with than my own wife in a way, right? And it's hard to convey that message to her, but it's like, I just need her to support me and understand me and be my new battle buddy, right? Say, hey, we're going to figure this out together, instead of a lot of families that are like, I don't know what's wrong with you, you're crazy, see you, is like, say, no, hey, like, I may not understand you. Will you help me understand? Like, I'm not judging you. Like, I'm here for you and I have your back. I think that's the biggest message that I want to convey to families, right? No matter if it's a husband or a wife or families, is like, just sit down and have our back instead of being judgmental. I still remember the words when I came home that my dad was like, you need to grow up and go get a job. Like, he had no clue that like all I wanted to do is be in Afghanistan. Now he's telling me the way I viewed it, I'm being a little baby. I need to grow up and get a job, and the things that sit and the experiences that I have don't matter anymore. That was the past. Like, that's the hardest. Like, that time in my life defined the person I am here today, and that did not matter to anybody. You know?
What's your relationship like with your parents at the moment? I mean, has that changed?
It's really kind of changed. I think they're still trying to figure out the military thing, but since then my little brother has joined the military, and now, man, they have a lot of military relics around their house, and my dad wears a proud, Army veteran shirt and an Army dad shirt now. I still don't think they fully get it, but I think my experience through VCP and being very vocal about the experiences of veterans and my little brother experiencing it has changed their mindset. I still think they're hung up on some things, but it was the fact that I think my dad kind of sat back and was like, he's never told me, I don't think he'll ever tell me, but I feel that he has my back now, and that's been a game changer.
Yeah. So look, I mean, we talk about all the amazing things you've done and the people you've helped, and what do you see happening next? Like, where's the next step? How do you keep moving this forward?
So currently we're in 6 expansion cities, right? We're currently in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Longmont, Colorado, so it's kind of suburb of Denver, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, St. Louis, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and the last one, we haven't announced it yet, so you get breaking news, Glendale, Arizona, it looks like. So there's still my brothers and sisters out there that are struggling, and we're not going to leave them behind. We're going to be in a community soon with you. And what I challenge, the people that are listening to this podcast today is get involved. It doesn't have to be our nonprofit, but get involved with your local nonprofit and go out there and in our case, in our nonprofit, help build the tiny houses. These aren't, necessarily built by construction workers. These are built by you. You're the ones inserting the windows. You're the ones helping lay the path and put the roof on these and everything else like that. Like, I would love for you to get involved and kind of make that impact and difference. Anybody can make a difference, be it time, talent, or treasure. Like, it's get involved in your community. You never know the life you're going to change or the impact you're going to have until you do it. And so that's what's next, man. We're expanding. And we used to have not only our back, but other nonprofits' backs in that community to make a change in their community.
Yeah, spot on. Brandon, I don't think we could leave it in a better way. Anyone who's listening, get out there, help. Every single bit of help, makes a difference. I mean, I know what I went through last year. It was the voices and the people who reached out to me, the people who picked me up, who helped me. That gets you through. And just like you're saying, pass it on, help other people. It makes us stronger. It makes us a better community. There is nothing that we can't do if we all work together, just like you have shown. So look, first of all, thank you so much for being on with us today. We really appreciate it. Keep doing what you're doing, man. It's amazing. And quick shout out for everyone. Where would they like, if they can help you, where can they reach out to?
Yeah, so vcp.org or veteranscommunityproject.org. There's a donate tab or info tab on Bring Me to Your City. But again, we would love to be in every city. We'd love to help anybody. Any veterans that are listening to the podcast, reach out, man. Like, I'm serious. I have your back. We're going to figure this out. Like, there's no reason to take your life, man. Like, I promise you, you're worth it. and I love you and I appreciate everything you do. Like, give us that opportunity. Give me that opportunity.
Brandonn, what a pleasure to meet you, sir. I really appreciate it, and I hope we get to chat again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, brother.
I think that it's only the people who have gone through difficult moments who are the ones that can then help others go through the same. And I think that's exactly what we saw in Brandonn today. Now, Brandonn was right at the bottom. He was trying to take his own life, and yet he managed to stop himself, and he managed to realize exactly the most important thing in the world was his family and his community, and they both saved him. And as a result of what he went through, he was able to use those experiences to help others going through the same thing, and he's gone on to save many lives. I suppose the big question is, how did he manage to turn that corner? And I think the answer is community. He was surrounded by community that encouraged him and helped him, showed him what he could do, and then guided him on the path to do so. And now he is that community, and he's showing people, he's surrounding people. And I think it just reminds us that support creates support. It always passes it on. Thanks for listening to Searching for Heroes. Listen ad-free with a Fox News Podcasts Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app.